Hi, my name's Trish Roberts and you're listening to Live Vegan. This is podcast number 8. I would like to share a couple of excerpts, one from a mail list and another from a transcript portion of a talk by Professor Francione in France a few years ago about the problems with welfare, quote, reform, end quote, and why vegan education is so important. You can find Professor Francione's blog online at abolitionistapproach.com. He writes, "If we campaign for, quote, compassionate, end quote, treatment today, how can we say that this, quote, compassionate, end quote, treatment is unacceptable tomorrow? Animal welfare reform campaigns, which talk about, quote, compassionate, end quote, practices, most certainly send a message to the public. Products produced, quote, compassionately, end quote, are morally okay to consume. If you look on the net, people are embracing being, quote, conscientious omnivores, end quote, because animal welfare has supposedly improved. We have had welfare reform for 200 years now. We are using more animals in more horrific ways than at any time in human history. Welfare reform does not work. It cannot work. Animals are chattel property. Given that status and the reality of markets, including and especially the fact of international markets and, quote, free trade, end quote, agreements, animal welfare will rarely, if ever, provide more protection to animals than what is economically justifiable. That is, animal interests are only protected when humans benefit economically." And a historical review of animal welfare reform, which I did in my 1995 book, Animals, Property and the Law, and which I updated in a length essay contained in my book, Animals as Persons, bears this out. We get rid of or modify practices such as the veal crate, or we require stunning before slaughter, because these practices reduce carcass damage and worker injuries. These reforms increase productivity. Yes, industry puts up a, quote, show fight, end quote, against these reforms, but as Roger Yates and other sociologists have pointed out, that is a typical part of the, quote, dance, end quote. Industry imposes an opportunity cost to provide a disincentive to future demands for change that may actually be economically disadvantageous to industry. Industry eventually gives in, animal groups declare victory, and praise institutional exploiters who claim that they really care for animals. The public is reassured that animal welfare is improving. Only the animals lose. Interestingly, if animal advocates consistently campaign for abolition and thereby send a clear message to the public, the reaction of industry would be to engage in welfare reform anyway. That is, it is not necessary to campaign for welfare reform. If we campaign for abolition, we get reform anyway. But we will at least be positioned to be speaking clearly and delivering a clear message about veganism, so we would be further ahead. Creative, non-violent vegan education can work. It does work. If PETA, Humane Society of the United States, RSPCA, etc. put their money, in brackets, HSUS alone has $225 million in reserves, end brackets, into vegan education, we would effect significant change overnight, in brackets, or almost, end brackets. We should never promote the consumption of animals as the RSPCA promotes through its Freedom Food label, or as PETA does by praising institutional exploiters with whom it makes, quote, deals, end quote, on welfare reform. We should no more support welfare reform than we should campaign for padded water boards to be used in torturing, quote, terrorists, end quote, or for more, quote, humane, end quote, methods of child molestation or rape. Rape and child molestation and torture go on every second of every day all over the world. They are realities, just as animal exploitation is a reality. But should we campaign for, quote, humane, end quote, forms of torture, child molestation or rape? Most of us would say, quote, of course not, end quote. So why is it okay to think it perfectly appropriate in the contexts of non-humans? And now I'd like to read this transcription from a talk Professor Francione did in France a few years ago. The regulation of animals does nothing to increase production costs of exploitation. We intuitively think it does when you regulate animals, but what it does, it makes production costs go up. We think it makes supply go down, and we think it makes demand go down, and therefore make the quantity of animals be reduced, but it doesn't work that way. It never has. Generally, animal welfare reform decreases production costs and makes it cheaper for the producers to make animal products. We are not doing any good promoting welfarist regulation. For example, the Veal crate campaign in Europe, where there was a movement to eliminate the veal crate over a period of time, this doesn't make veal more expensive. What it does is it reduces production costs of veal because calves in these little chutes get sick, they get stressed out, they need to be medicated, that costs money, which increases production costs. If you take the little calves out of the veal crates and put them in these units, it reduces production costs. Studies show there is increased demand for veal, not a decreased demand for veal. This basic story can be told about every sort of regulation of animal exploitation. It's always production costs go down, demand goes up, and because production costs go down, this often gets passed along to the consumer. And also, what gets passed along to the consumer is the message that it's okay to eat this flesh because it's, quote, humane, end quote. Veganism is one of the most important single forms of social activism a human being can engage in. The most important thing we can do is be vegan. Veganism is not a diet, as we all know, and it's not a lifestyle. It's a political commitment to nonviolence. It is an extremely important commitment to nonviolence. If we believe in nonviolence, the cornerstone of nonviolence is veganism. And we have an animal, quote, movement, end quote, telling us, quote, oh, it's very hard to be vegan. You're hanging on the cross for animals. You're a martyr for the animals, end quote. We have to stop that. We have to make it clear to people that being vegan is easy. It's extremely easy, and it's crucial. We need to build a vegan movement. We talk about the animal movement, but we don't have an animal, quote, movement, end quote, yet. We don't have a political movement. We have charities. We have big organizations which have millions of dollars, and they're charities, bourgeois charities. They're not political. They have nothing to do with political ideas. We need to build a political movement. We don't have one yet, and veganism has to be its foundation. Thank you for listening. Come visit us on LiveVegan on Facebook, facebook.com/LiveVegan for all things abolitionist vegan. And also check out Professor Gary L. Francione's blog, theabolitionistapproach.com. And most importantly, if you're not vegan, go vegan. It's easy, it's better for you, for the planet, and most importantly, it's the morally right thing to do. Till next time, bye for now.